Hi there, welcome. I'm Lou Sabino, Director of Admission and Financial Aid at Overlake. So happy to have you join us today for another OWLS Talk. Today the topic is athletics, and so I have with me today John Wiley, our Director of Athletics, and Mike Fine, our Director of Middle School Athletics. And so they're going to be here to answer any questions you have about athletics at Overlake, and then more generally, if you have other questions about Overlake, we can answer those as well. So without further ado, I am going to introduce John Wiley, our Director of Athletics. John.
Thanks, Lou. Welcome, OWL fans. We have an outstanding athletic department we're excited to share with you tonight. As Lou mentioned, I'm John Wiley. I'm the athletic director at Overlake School, and my honor to introduce my sidekick, Mike Fine, who's the middle school athletic director. Mike, go ahead.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Before we get going, we've got a short video that we wanted to share with you. So hold on. We're going to get that up for you and get that playing.
Does that go my way? Hello. Thanks for watching that. That is a little drum line and Mike Fine creation. Excellent, Mike. Thanks for putting that together. It gives you kind of a snapshot of what we do. We offer interscholastic athletics from grades 5 all the way up through 12. I will start off with the upper school. As far as offerings, in the fall, our normal offerings are girls soccer in the fall, volleyball, boys and girls cross country, boys tennis, boys golf, and we play ultimate at our school. On the boys side, it's in the fall. In the winter, we have 2 very large basketball programs for boys and girls. And then the spring, baseball, boys lacrosse, boys soccer, girls lacrosse, girls tennis, girls ultimate, and girls golf. So those are our upper school offerings. Mike, what do we got for middle school?
Thanks. In the middle school, we've very similar sports, just a little bit different seasons. So for the fall seasons, we have boys and girls cross country, boys and girls soccer, as well as volleyball. When we get to the winter, we play a lot, and when I say a lot, I mean a lot of middle school basketball for both the boys and the girls. And then as we roll into the spring, we've got boys and girls lacrosse, boys and girls ultimate, baseball, as well as boys and girls golf. So that's what we have at the middle school level. Back to you, John.
All right. And as far as leagues, we compete. We're the WIAA oversees athletics in the state of Washington for all the high schools. Overlake is no exception. We was considered a 1A school, which is kind of in the middle of the pack as far as enrollment in the state. And we play in an exceptionally competitive league. We are now in what is known as the Emerald Sound Conference. It has independent private schools like we do, schools like University Prep, Seattle Academy, Northwest, Bush, Bear Creek, Forest Ridge, Eastside Prep. It also has some public schools. It has South Whidbey, Granite Falls, Sultan, Couple other privates. Well, one other private is a new school for us, but a great school is King's. And we have a charter school in our league called Summit Sierra. So it's a real diverse league. It's very competitive, and it really meets our needs in all of our offerings. So and as far as middle school, Mike would be the first one to tell you that many of those schools participate in our middle school league, which is called the Crosstown Middle School League. So with that, Lou, do you want to take it, or would you?
Sure, absolutely. So thanks, John and Mike. And so I think at this point we'll open it up to questions. And so if you're tuning into one of these for the first time, you should see on the right-hand side of your screen there's a little question and answer section. And so if you got a question that you want to ask John or Mike or any of us also here but not on camera, is the rest of our admission office. So if you have any questions about the school or any questions about athletics, you can just type them in there, and my colleague Jasmine will read questions that we can answer live on air. We may also just answer your questions on the side there. So feel free to type in any questions, and then we'll get started. So Jasmine, do you have a few questions that people submitted ahead of time that we might want to start with?
Sure, thanks, Lou. We do have a good mix of middle school and upper school families that are attending tonight's event. We do have a list of pre-submitted questions, and I will go ahead and send this over to, let's try for Mike for the first question. Mike, can you tell us a little bit more about let's say if there's a new student that's interested in trying out sports at the middle school level, how can they start to get involved, and what does maybe the practice schedule look like, or even the game schedule? Can you explain a little bit more about that for the new athlete or even a student who might be advanced?
Yeah, for sure. You know, one of the great things about the middle school athletics here at Overlake is I look at it as a way to get out and experience athletics. So we really take everybody from zero experience to the most experienced player and try to find a place for them to play where it can be fun, it can be competitive, they can learn a little, and they can fail a little, which is all just part of athletics. So typically, if as a middle school athlete, you're looking at 2 to 3 days of practice or competitions in a week, 75-minute practices. So let's take, for example, a soccer player. We'll start in the fall. We'll have 2 practices of 75 minutes from 3:30 to 4:15, or 3:45 to 4:30, just kind of depending on when we can get that coach there. And we'll have that practice a couple days a week, and then that third day during the week, we'll have a game, and it might be a home game, it might be an away game at one of our league schools. So that's really what it looks like. We end early purposefully. We're done by 4:30 at the latest. So our middle schoolers, who are the predominant users of our transportation system, have an opportunity to catch a bus at about 4:50, 4:55 when they roll off of campus. So that's what it looks like in general. Basketball, teams in the spring maybe it's just a slight bit different, but generally that's what it looks like in terms of what a practice and game week looks like. How do they get involved? Really, we kind of survey families and say, hey, what are you interested in playing? And that starts at the very beginning of the year when you're turning in your medical forms. And then we kind of circle back around because we realize that, what sounded like a great idea in July may not be what your child is interested in January or February. So we'll constantly kind of keep coming back and trying to figure out what teams kids are interested in playing in, what sports, and then building from there.
Great. Thanks, Mike. That's really helpful. We have some follow-up questions regarding middle school sports. The first question is, do you offer middle school tennis?
We do not offer middle school tennis. The reason being is that our upper school tennis program is a very strong and very large program. And honestly, we don't have court space to get everybody on, and there's no other tennis teams in our league, so we really don't have anybody to play. So we hold off on tennis until the upper school, although we do encourage our tennis players, if they're interested in that, maybe give something else a try. And they might like to, they might find that they like a different sport. We've got many of our upper school tennis players who do a second sport, which is one of the great things about Overlake is our multi-sport athletes.
Thanks, Mike. Another sport of question is lacrosse. If a child has not had exposure to lacrosse or maybe any other sport that is offered at Overlake, would the student be able to try out or pick up those skills in middle school?
For sure. That's really what a lot of what we're trying to do is expose kids to those opportunities. In lacrosse, for example, in the past, we've run Saturday clinics in the fall and in the winter to try to give those kids an opportunity to try the sport and just work on the basics. What a lot of our kids find, especially with lacrosse, for example, that if you've done another sport, there's a lot of skills that are transferable. And our coaches are very good about saying, you know, if you've played baseball or if you've played ultimate or you've done this or you've done that, try X or try Y. And suddenly it clicks and away they go. The next thing you know, they're catching and throwing, and they're asking you if they can go to the elementary school and throw the ball against the wall, you know, for a couple hours. Yeah, it's a great opportunity to try something new for sure.
Fantastic. Thanks, Mike. Now I will direct the question to John. John, there's a question about transportation options for away games, or if you can maybe tell the families out there kind of what that looks like in terms of participating in sports or games outside or off campus.
We offer essentially the traditional high school experience and in every bit of that. So if you think back to your high school, I got a feeling there was a big bus with the name of your school on the side of it. Guess what? We've got plenty of them, and we will take you. In fact, that's the only way you're going to get to the game. The days of mom and dad driving you to high school games, unfortunately, is not part of the team experience we seek. So we want your parents at the games, but we are driving you. And so we have professional bus drivers, and we have your whole team waiting on the bus, and your coaches are there, and half the fun is the bus ride. Let's be honest. I mean, whether it's a long way, whether it's a rainy night, or whether it's stopping at McDonald's on the way back, it's a lot of fun, especially at the high school level. So those bus rides, I will tell you that high school girls normally are singing or they've got the stereo cranked and they're singing together. You won't see the boys do it together, but they will. They're having their own fun as well. So definitely part of the culture, and we will transport to and from all away games.
It's very helpful. Thanks, John.
And can I also follow up with a little bit of what you were asking, Mike? I think the way to look at Overlake in athletics is we have to have a wider range, right? We have to be the department that does interest kids who maybe haven't played a lot of sports before they came here. But at the same time, we have to meet the needs of the student that comes in and goes, you know what? I want to play in college. And we have college athletes leaving every one of our senior classes after graduation going off. There are college athletes in our midst every year. And I think we do a good job of what we call making your time the big time. And so we love hearing stories about our graduates who are playing in college programs. And so if that's a goal, we have to be as competitive as any Kinko school in their development. And at the same time, meet the needs of the people who are like, is it okay for me to try a sport? And so we have all of those types of athletes and all of them in between. And some of them pick up a lacrosse stick or a baseball glove in 5th grade or 6th grade. Some of them, and Lou will attest to this because Lou's one of our fine head coaches, and he's a he's a boys lacrosse coach. Probably too many come up to him and say, I've never played lacrosse and it's 9th grade. Can I still start? Yes, you can start playing lacrosse then, and any other sport. And we will teach you, and we have great coaches to do so.
Great, thanks, John. And I think even this might be a good segue into the next question from a parent. Does Overlake participate in outside tournaments, such as the Washington State Cup for soccer, or any other things that you can tell about Overlake athletes?
Okay, here you go. So here's the thing. State Cup for soccer is a club. Okay, so I'm guessing that your child has been involved in club sports, and that's fantastic, because we have so many kids who have done, who are still participating in club sports. They're done so well at the youth level, and up through junior high, many kids play both Overlake and play for their club team, and even into high school. And that kind of explained my theory is that if an athlete has played a lot before we've ever met them, you're going to put together a pretty good team of athletes. You know, whether you're successful or not, we'll find out. But boy, we'll have some talent. And I'll give you an example. We have a phenomenal volleyball program, and that volleyball program at the varsity level in high school is made up of almost all club players, but they choose to play for Overlake. And last year they went to the state tournament. So what equates to state cup in soccer, or state tournaments or state competitions in club sports at the high school level, that is the WIA state tournaments. And we are lucky and fortunate enough to have many of our programs participate there and win titles occasionally, which makes it even more fun. But so yes, we play in state tournaments. We also travel. I understand, you know, I realize that club sports have tons of travel these days. We have lots of travel. We have special trips. Even at the middle school level, our basketball team will travel out of state once a year. Both the boys and the girls have had great experiences. Our lacrosse programs and our basketball programs and others, our baseball team played in the Dominican Republic. They've played all over. So yes, we travel. We want to make it a special experience. It's not something you should do every weekend as far as out-of-state travel in my book. It should be a special experience, and we take advantage of those. So yes.
That's awesome. Thanks, John. The next question, I think it would be ideal if Mike can respond, and John, for the middle school and upper school level. There's a question about, do you have different levels of teams based on skill?
So the answer to that is yes. And let me give you a great example. One thing that we started 2 years ago is in basketball, for example. With our 5th and 6th grade students, we found that that was an entry point for a lot of students where they hadn't played necessarily a lot of basketball. They wanted to have they wanted to learn how to play. They wanted to work on their skills, but we found that some kids were just not willing to come out and play because they were going to be on a team. So what we did is we created our own little 3-on-3 league. And what we ended up finding is that we had maybe 60 5th and 6th grade boys and girls that came out, and they would work on skills for, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes. And then they would just play a lot of half court 3-on-3 basketball, which got them a lot of touches on the ball, got them a chance to practice their skills, and their skill level as a whole went up. Then for our 7th and 8th graders, those that have been playing basketball, and even some that were new to the game, we would find, we'd run them through some evaluations, and then we would put them onto teams so that we could have them play against other teams in our league that were of similar skill level, because we want it to be a good experience. Nobody has a good time when it's 45-3. It's not good for anybody, but you know, if it's a 21-22 game, it's very exciting, and that's what the kids will remember. And they remember those experiences a lot more than they remember the scores. And just to echo what John said earlier, I've talked to many of our middle school athletes who remember the bus ride home from that 21 to 22 game than they do the bus ride home from the 45 to 2 game or whatever, those type of things. So it's really, it's not just the game itself. It's the experience with your classmates and trying something new, and like I said, failing. You're going to do a lot of failing especially on the basketball court. But you know what? That's all part of it, and that's how we all get better. So,
and
sorry, throw it over to you, John.
Okay. And one way we look at, and Mike talks about failure. Failure is part of sports, I think we should say in general. Overcoming failure is growth, right? And some of the, kind of a segue on yours, the way we look at success is whether or not that student wants to play that sport next year. And there are so many kids that play, for example, he was saying middle school basketball. Well, at the high school level, again, traditional high school program, we have a varsity. That's our top kids. Sometimes they're the older kids, usually they are, but they're not always, there are some young kids who are exceptionally talented who have a chance to be on the varsity as early as 9th grade. There's a junior varsity, which is the second level. And there's sometimes, like in basketball, because of that middle school experience, we have so many kids, we take them all. Just so you know, if your son or daughter has never picked up that basketball and wants to start in 9th grade and didn't play in middle school, we'll take them. But the fact is there's so many coming in middle school, and some of them don't even play on our top teams, but they keep playing in 9th grade, 10th grade. What we don't do, what your local public school does do, is we don't cut, right? So if they want to play basketball and they're not quote unquote good enough in a public school, they're simply not allowed to continue, and they will only be able to have a couple of teams worth their budget. In our case, we will make as many teams as we can. Now, sometimes that can look kind of crazy, right? We'll have all freshman teams. We have 3 boys teams and 2 girls teams. If we had enough for 4 boys and 3 girls, we'd find room. It's our job to do so, right? So, and we'll find competition because a lot of private schools have a similar philosophy, and trust me, they have similar level teams. So you could walk in this gym. I know it looks like there's a gym behind me, but technology. And there will be tons of kids and playing on tons of courts, and that's what we want. And to us, that's success. So yes, we want the first timers, we want the club kids, we want them all, and we'll find teams for all of them.
Wonderful. Thanks, Mike and John. Another parent is asking, can you play multiple sports in one trimester or term?
Right. Not in the state of Washington at our enrollment. Okay. In other words, at the upper school level, and we mirror this at the middle school level, you have to pick one. I know that's tough. But you can play up to 3 sports a year. So we figure that's a full boat, and I love that question. Keep those coming.
Great, thank you. Okay, let's see. What other questions do we have from parents? We have a middle school soccer question. So Mike, can you tell us, is there an option to continue for middle school soccer to play in winter or spring at school?
Once we have concluded our season, that's when that sport ends. What we're trying to do, though, is we're trying to get that soccer player to come play basketball with us, because we want them to maybe try something else. So, do we have a spring soccer league? No, we don't at its current, because we've got a number of other offerings. And for example, if your soccer player has thought about lacrosse, that's a great time to try it, because there are a lot of, like I said earlier, transferable skills between soccer and lacrosse. And why not go out and give it a try?
Great. Thanks, Mike. We have another middle school question about tennis this time. Are middle school students allowed to play on tennis courts?
I'll tell you that those tennis courts that we have do get a lot of use. They'll play on those tennis courts at some point in time during their PE classes, because I know our PE department does have a tennis unit. If there's not somebody playing on those tennis courts, they are allowed to play on them. However, those tennis courts are pretty heavily used. So trying to find time to come out and use them, you're welcome to come out and try. But, we probably have tennis players on there 6 days a week during the season.
Good to know. Okay, we have another parent question, and this can be answered by John and also Mike. Is there anything being done to promote sports skills during these COVID times?
Oh boy!
Yes, anything that you'd like to say too about our current students who are on Overlake Online? And
boy, John is really wanting to jump and answer this question. I'm gonna let him answer this one because he's excited about answering this question.
Is there stuff going on these days? Absolutely. We are, like I said, we are part of the WIAA, and we're one of the many schools in the state of Washington who is taking part in what they call the open coaching window, which started September 28th. And will go to the end of November and possibly longer. But we are offering practices right now, Monday through Saturday, every day after school. So if all our kids are online right now, they are still coming out. We have 250 students right now taking part in this. They are not required. They're choosing to do so. So we have coaches who are trained right now in how to deal in all the COVID restrictions, and we check kids in every day. I'm part of the check-in group, and Kim Stevens, our athletic trainer, has been running a great program. We have a full-time athletic trainer that is very rare, and what a resource she is. And so she's got all the coaches in lockstep. We're going through all the protocols, but the answer to your question is yes. So starting at around 4 o'clock and going to 6 o'clock, Monday through Friday, plus Saturday morning as early as 9 a.m. all the way. Girls basketball, I think, is the last one, and we go from 12 to 1. But we have lacrosse players, and we have soccer players, and we have cross country athletes, and we have basketball players, and tennis is going. And we got middle schools. I think we're the only nearby private middle school doing this. We're one of the only ones for sure. But at the high school level as well, the high school numbers are great. So it has been great for our kids, not just their skills. I mean, I think that takes a backseat right now. We want their mental health. We want them to feel good around their teammates and just connecting with each other. And the positive feedback we've received has been a reward all in itself. So yes, we're doing stuff, and yes, we'll continue to do stuff as long as it's safe. And under Kim's leadership, we've been able to keep it that way. Mike, if you have anything else you want to drop into that one.
Sure. I think, as John said, what I'm seeing, especially at the middle school level, and what I've gotten from parents is that many times this is the best part of our week. And it's really that opportunity to kind of just get out and run around a little bit and try to stay connected with their peer group, with their classmates. I think what's even more amusing to me is to see how many of our coaches, many of which are teachers at the middle school level, enjoy seeing their students and seeing them live and in person, and not in a little 2x3 box on their screen. And the other day I walked into I was walking by a group playing basketball, and there was a conversation going on in French because our French teacher had a couple of his students, and I had to turn and look quickly because all of a sudden it was, this conversation. And I thought, how spectacular is that we could actually, that could actually happen. It just did. And it was great. It was spontaneous. And it's just so fun to see those kids out here. I will tell you that compared to some of the other schools I've talked to, I think we're doing things a little more conservatively in terms of our group sizes and our own restrictions. But it seems to be working well for us, and we're having, like I said, a real good experience to this point.
Or maybe it's first store's point. I think it's powerful.
Oh.
Okay, our next question we will ask about upper school. Can you please tell us the season for upper school volleyball and tennis? Will they conflict? And also from a pre-submitted question, we also have a question around practice and tournament information.
Okay, well, let's start with volleyball, and I'm assuming this is for females. Volleyball at the high school level in Washington State is only girls volleyball. So, thank you. Okay, sorry, I'm having a little power cord issue. So the volleyball season runs in the fall, and normally that would start about the third week of August. And if we get back to the state tournament like we've been the last few years, we would take that right up into the middle of November. Girls tennis is a spring sport here, so we would be talking about around a March 1, late February start that would go through the end of May with that state tournament. So, and with regards to just practices in general, as far as timing, they're facility driven. We are so lucky. Thank you. Many of our peer schools have facility shortages. This is not one of them. We have more facilities for athletics than you could ever want, right? We have 2 gyms, and we have 6 tennis courts during some seasons because we have 2 indoor courts. We have 4 fields. I mean, it's a great facility school if you want to be in athletics. But so it depends on whether or not, for example, the practice is on campus or off campus. We can host almost all our practices. So if you're looking at lots of schools, please figure out where their home fields are. Where do they practice? We practice for almost all our sports on campus. So middle school goes first, usually about 3:15 to 4:30, and then we jump on about 4:30 to 6. So it's 90-minute to 2-hour practice, depending on the sport. And then if we have an off-campus practice, like for example, our baseball program goes off-campus, that's a 3:30 to 5:30 situation. So generally bank on 2 hours. That's what standard high school practices are, and most of them are on campus.
Thanks, John. Let's see, another question that's come in is in regards to just travel. So what is the general scope of additional expenses associated with sports, especially for those who travel?
Good news on this one. And I got a feeling this might, coming out of a club sport mentality, it is kind of hard to get your heads around. I get it. It is in our budget. We handle all of the travel. The only travel that we wouldn't handle is out of state, because that's always, that's usually a tournament and a choice. If you want to fly to go to the Bay Area, we will keep the price down. We will do it as a team. But those are the only, anything exceptional like that, and an annual trip out of state would be about the only thing that we would look for some help from the families on. Everything else, travel, weekend games, everything inside the state of Washington is covered. So that's all that's built into tuition, actually. So.
Yeah, let me jump in here and let John plug in his computer.
Sure. Thank you.
So I would just say that when you think about the costs associated with going to school at Overlake, the tuition includes everything that is really a part of the Overlake experience. So athletics, the ability to play sports, where at some schools that might be an additional cost, that's a part that's bundled into tuition. Things like uniforms for the sports that you play. Oftentimes the equipment depends a little bit on the sport, but equipment, balls, and a lot of gear and that kind of thing. That's all part of what you're paying for in tuition. That goes for other activities at the school as well. So, clubs that you might be involved in or that kind of thing. You're not going to pay extra for those. There are some costs above and beyond tuition that you will incur, and I'll just sort of broaden this out beyond athletics. So students do pay for books. That's an additional expense. Transportation to and from school, so distinct from program transportation in athletics, or like if they're doing some kind of thing associated with a club or something like that. If the transportation to and from school is an additional expense, it's optional. So all of these are optional things that students can do, and that also includes food in the campus center. So those are the three sort of big ones: cost above and beyond tuition. But as far as athletics goes, that's a cost that's bundled into what you're paying for tuition.
Thank you, Lou. Currently, we're waiting for some parent questions to come in, and please know you're more than welcome to ask questions pertaining to athletics as well as physical education and admission questions, which Lou can also help answer. I think while we're waiting for questions, one thing I'm curious about, Mike and John, can you tell us, with your time at Overlake, is there a favorite memory you have of a student or team?
Wow, favorite student team.
Any memory tell us about?
Oh, it looks like it's you, John.
Oh, me.
Oh. Put John on the
I'll give you one. And there've been a few, and most of them, because I'm your competitive athletic director, they mostly come from being witness to state tournaments. I have two. One was back in 2009, I believe was the year, and Overlake was playing in had an exceptionally good lacrosse program with a lot of. I mean, it was one big league, and we were playing Eastside Catholic in the state championship at Memorial Stadium on an 85-degree day in late May. And it felt like the whole school was there. And from the opening face-off, we just played out of our mind and won the state title. And it was a wonderful moment. And then the other one was another one like that. It was 2016 girls soccer. So what we do, we believe that these programs are every bit as important than anything goes on in the classroom or anywhere else. So much can be gained from an athletic experience. Look at your Fortune 500 CEOs, 350 of them played sports in high school. Bottom line, these are learning opportunities, and we support them. And one of the great ways we support them, you could see that day. That was a day in November, mid to late November, and it was the state semifinals, and it was at Shoreline Stadium. And our girls, who were super talented, were taking on Kings, which is a buzzsaw for girls soccer, really good. And we just emptied out of school. We at noon that day, anyone who wanted to go to the game was bused to Shoreline Stadium. We got the tickets ahead of time, and I looked up in the stands from down on the field, and the whole side, and we were worried because Kings is literally a mile from Shoreline Stadium. And I looked up, and the whole crowd was in green and gold, and they were chanting and they were loud. And I looked up, and they're math teachers and science teachers and people who work in the kitchen and bus drivers and, maintenance staff. And they're up there and they're all cheering before the game starts. 45 seconds into the game, we score the game's only goal. We go on to win the state title the next day. So yes, those are great memories, but really because of the community, right? I have seen wonderful teams on fields for many, many years. But when you see a crowd like that, you're reminded of what a supportive community looks like. And that's what we have at Overlake, and that's what makes it really, really special. Beat that one, Mike.
No pressure, Mike. Yes, Mike, if you can tell us maybe any favorite memory in your time at Overlake or anything that you recall that stands out for you.
Yeah, sure. So like John, I have two. And surprisingly enough, the first one that came to my mind was also that lacrosse game that we played at Memorial Stadium. I think a lot of people thought we had no business being there, but it was just an incredible game to be a part of. I will tell you, though, from the middle school level, one of my favorite things is kind of almost an everyday occurrence. And that's when I see some of our youngest teams out playing basketball, for example, and they're working really hard and somebody scores a basket, and everybody from our team will go run and give that person a hug or a high five or something like that. And the game's still going on, and they just forget about that because they're so excited. And the next thing you know, they're all running back on defense or something like that, trying to scramble because the other team has gotten the ball and started down the court. And I think that, as John mentioned, that community, that kind of sense of camaraderie, it's like, hey, we did. It's not just the one kid that scored the basket; it's the whole team scored the basket. And especially at that young level, it's really fun to see. Usually good for a couple laughs as well when they figure out that they have to go play defense. But it's something that starts real young and just kind of builds in terms of that community. So that's one of the things that, like I said, we get to see that on a regular basis, but it's a lot of fun to see.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I'm sure you've witnessed the growth of your students going all the way from middle school and continuing on to upper school. Thanks for sharing those memories. You've painted a vivid picture. Okay, so we're still waiting for questions. I'm also wondering, and maybe parents are wondering about this out there, how do you support students that are athletes, but also they're in the classroom, just making sure that there's the balance and the attention that's needed to both experiences for both the academic program and also participating in athletics?
Sure. I'll start, and then I'll throw it over to John. What I would say is in the middle school, given that we're only going 2 to 3 days a week, we find that those kids kind of start finding those time management skills early on, and they actually do pretty well. And given the time period that we have that we are asking them to commit to, we don't find that it's really that much of an extra burden for them in terms of their academics. I think actually many of them do better because they have that opportunity to go run around and exercise. And that exercise that they're getting is, helping. I see it as something that helps their academics in terms of, it helps cement those things because they've got that extra blood and oxygen running around. I also think that the gym that you see behind John or some of the other places that you'll see, I think they're the best classrooms we have on campus. I'm a little biased, mind you, but I also think they're some of the greatest classrooms that we have. So I'll throw it over to John and let him, because I know he likes this subject as well.
Hopefully, I'm there. Okay. So I'll just quote a kid who played for me years ago. I was a varsity coach for 15 years, and he came up to me, and he's a really good student. And he said, "Coach, I just can't wait until basketball starts because my grades start getting so much better." And I'm like, "Andrew, why do you even say that?" Right? I mean, that makes no sense to me. But the fact is that kids who play sports in high school and middle school for that matter, but certainly there's been a lot of studies done. And kids who play sports in high school get higher grade points than non-student athletes. That's well documented at Overlake as well. And what he was really saying was, I do so much better job managing my time when I'm in season. So when I think our grades reflect that. We're really proud of how some of our teams do. 2 years ago, I think it's 2018, speaking of memories, we had a phenomenal soccer program, and they were on the verge of repeating as state champions on the boys' side. And the coolest part of the whole day was the fact that they at the state championship, you award the highest the team with the highest grade point average in the state of Washington. And for the first time, they didn't do it at halftime. We were up at half. They said, we'll do it after the game. Because we won the state championship, they presented the trophy, and then they turned around and said, and the state academic champions are also the state champions. It's the Overlake Owls. You know, so our kids take their books very, very seriously. It is why they're here. They know that, but they're also very competitive on teams about their grade points, to be honest with you. But at the end of the day, they balance it, and that's what sports can give you.
We're so lucky. Thank you, John and Mike, for your answers. Lou, I think I'll turn it to you if you have a question as well.
Yeah, so I have a question that I'm hoping John and maybe Mike, you can address. You know, so many of the families that are probably tuning in today are looking at a number of different schools in the area, and one of the great things about Seattle is that there are a lot of really good school choices for families. And so I guess in service to those families who are trying to sort of parse out sort of what makes Overlake different and what makes Overlake unique, and perhaps, you know, for those families who have an interest in athletics, they either have a child who is, you know, really interested in athletics, or they just really value athletics in the school experience. What do you think sort of sets Overlake apart from some of the other schools that they're probably considering?
Okay. Well, I think for many things we've touched on, I'll just start with this, and it's kind of hard right now, right? You're looking at schools, and most of them you're looking at through a computer screen. Our campus speaks for itself. I mean, we're really, really lucky that in 1970 someone bought a huge farm in Redmond. That was, can you imagine having 77 acres in Redmond in 2020? This is a 77-acre campus that has facilities that I think any school would love to call home, would be proud of, I should say. So, you know, when you think about things like balancing academic, you know, if you're concerned about what's the balance between academics and athletics, well, ask yourself, does it take you half an hour just to get to practice? Because for many of our peer schools, it does. You know, so we are so lucky that our kids can just walk down the hill and go to lacrosse practice. And they don't have to wait till 7 o'clock at night to get on a field that they have to rent from the county or the city. I mean, these are real challenges for smaller schools. So we're lucky we have the facilities. We also have, I mean, everyone probably says this, I will stand behind our coaching staff. I think our coaching staff is exceptional and produces teams. Sometimes when I look at sometimes the kids, you know, they're not the fastest group or the tallest group or this, but they're so well coached and they're always competitive. And then so on those years when we do get the height or the speed, you combine it with our coaching staff, it makes those years really, really special. And I think that if you look at things like how players are treated, you know, go to a game. If we're lucky enough to have spectators this year, go to a game. We're going to stream games. Look at how the kids are treated by their coaches. Are they treated with respect? Are they treated by essentially teachers? Are they teaching them things, or are they just saying, you know, win the game? Sports and life should be so much more than just winning a game. And I think at Overlake, we have teachers who understand what their real job is to teach character. So I would say that we do as good a job of that as any school I have ever been around. And honestly, when you throw in the facilities, the coaches, and the absolute experience that it can be all the way from 5th grade through 12th, it's hard to beat. Mike?
I think you summed it up pretty well. But I think that the one thing I would add is, on top of what our coaches bring, is probably the relationships that they build with those kids. And again, a lot of our coaches, especially at the middle school level, I would say probably almost 75%, 80% of our middle school coaches are teachers here on campus. And it's helping those kids, build a relationship in a different way than just being in the classroom. And I think our teachers get as much out of that as well as our kids do. And it seems at times we almost have to convince those teachers a little bit that they want to coach at first. And then once they get going and they find out how wonderful it is to work with these kids in this kind of environment, we retain them. And that would be the other thing that I would say that we do a really good job of here at this school, is that we retain a lot of our coaches. We've got many of them that have been here for a long time, much more at the upper school level than the middle school level. And so let me throw that back to John, because I think he would like to say something about that as well.
Yeah, just one thing. And at the middle school level, it's so key to watch kids. For some reasons, if they are the student of their science teacher and their science teacher is coaching cross country or name the sport, it's a good reason to come out. At the upper school, though we have some teachers, we have lots of professional coaches who are from other walks of life who show up here with huge dedication at 3:30 or 4 to practice every day. But what I'm really starting to see a trend of, which makes me so proud, is we are getting so many alums back. Give you a great example. There's a woman named Katie Hill, and she is a first-year teacher at Overlake. She is now a teacher. She was a 3-sport athlete at Overlake. It seems like yesterday. She graduated in 2014. She played 3 sports. She went on to play college lacrosse at Claremont McKenna. She's a role model, and she represents, I'm telling you, we probably have more than half a dozen young alums who are coming back and coaching, whether they're teaching on campus or whether they're working a tech job in Seattle, and they come out here to coach. They're giving back because of the experience they received. And I really think that's as good an example as any of why Overlake really has a standout program.
Thanks, John. And actually, there's a parent who's asking a little bit more about coaches. Can you tell us, Mike or John, approximately how many coaches we have, and are all the coaches school staff members? You mentioned alums, but anything you want to add to that?
It's kind of hard to track. We have positions for 90 coaching positions. We have 90 coaching positions. Now, there are coaches who fill a couple of those a year. They might be a Jeff Loringer who coaches tennis in the fall for boys and coaches tennis in the spring for girls, and then turns around and coaches middle school basketball for Mike in the winter. But so they're up to 90 positions a year. They're probably filled by around 60 coaches. At the middle school level, a lot of faculty. At the upper school level, everything from people at Amazon to financial planners to cell company workers, and lots of alums filling a lot of those roles. But I just think of Lou's program is a pretty good example. Lou's got 4 coaches, including himself, in upper school boys lacrosse. He is the director of admissions for the school, so he's an administrator. He has a teacher on campus named Jamie McVicker, who is a very popular teacher who's on his staff, and he has not 1 but 2 alums, Curtis and Colden. Both come back. They both work in the tech world, and they come back for practices every afternoon. So that's our typical coaching staff, but it's usually very connected to our community, and that sometimes includes parents. I'm sure lots of parents think they'd be great coaches, and believe it or not, some of them are. and they go through and they learn it, and maybe they coach their kid when they were younger and they want to get involved. If they want to get on board with our department, we want to hear from, we want to work with them. So it's a wide range, and I couldn't be more proud of how dynamic that is.
That's great. Thank you, John. We have one final parent question that we're able to address. Either Mike or John, if you can tell us, for the students that are athletes outside of school, what is the requirement of attendance? Is it possible to partially participate in sports? Let's say if you have athletes who are playing other sports, but they also want to participate in Overlake sports.
So there's a question about whether or not, for example, if they were playing club soccer for their local team that they may have played for with their friends for years, can they get involved in Overlake soccer? I'll let Mike handle that at the middle school level. At the high school level, generally, not all the time, but generally, the sports seasons stop for the high school season. So, for example, if you played AAU basketball in the spring and summer, in the winter, they take the winter off so those kids can take part in their high school programs. There's some sports, soccer has kind of vacillated on the girls' side from going concurrently to stopping. So the answer is the state doesn't let you, the WIA does not allow students to leave practice early or come late on a regular basis in order to participate in both. But the reality is that most sports, for example, volleyball, does not have a competing season in the fall for club so that the high school can do it. So Mike, do you want to add anything at the middle school level?
Sure. At the middle school level, we have many kids that do participate in both. However, when that happens, it's usually when the schedules align. So, for example, we play both our boys and girls soccer in the fall. Sometimes we'll have some other kids that will play, with their rec team or their club team. And what we ask is that you be there for those, 3 days a week. And sometimes that doesn't work. And that's okay. At some point in time, we do ask kids to make a choice because it's not fair to the kids that are there every day at practice for those that are only coming once or twice a week. So, and maybe what that means is we don't get you for soccer season, but we get you for basketball season, or we get you for something in the spring. So generally, we do want you there for those 2 to 3 days a week. And hopefully that will work with your existing schedule.
And almost
throw it back to John.
just really quickly, just because it's a big question. Almost all of our kids who play club sports play for our teams. That's just, and if they don't initially, they eventually do. It's just the way it is, and they wind up really wrapping their arms around the programs that we have. So. It's a great question, though, and one that's not going to go away.
Great. Well, Mike and John, thank you so much for answering the range of questions. We had some great parent questions that came in asking about both middle school and upper school. I'm going to now bring it to Lou to close our program.
Thanks, Jasmine. Yeah, and thanks, John, and thanks, Mike, for your time tonight and answering all the questions. If you have additional questions about athletics at Overlake, you can find John and Mike's contact information on the website. You can also always feel free to reach out to us in admission if you have any questions about the school or about the admission process. That's what we're here for, and we're happy to answer those questions. We're going to sign off now, but I would encourage you to continue to visit our website. We have additional ALS talks. We have another one coming up on Thursday for those of you who are looking at the upper school. Our upper school head and our assistant upper school head will be our guests. We also have other events that will be posted both on our website, on our Facebook page, and then for if you are interested in applying to the school, I would encourage you to start the application in Ravenna, which is how we manage your application, and you can find links to that on our website. So with that, I'll say thank you for joining us tonight, and wish you all a good evening. Take care.